Have you ever wondered why some people seem to walk through life with an unshakable certainty, as though the world itself bends to meet their expectations? Have you ever looked at extraordinary individuals and asked yourself what secret they know that others do not? What if the difference is not luck, privilege, talent, or timing? What if the difference is simply that they have accepted a truth that most people spend their lives ignoring? What if they have chosen to see themselves as the chosen one? The moment you hear those words, something inside you may resist. You may think that being chosen is reserved for a special few. You may believe that greatness belongs to people born under different circumstances, with better opportunities or more favorable conditions. But what if that belief is the very thing standing between you and the life you desire? What if the greatest limitation you have ever faced is not outside of you, but within the image you hold of yourself? Today, we are going to explore a profound principle. Life does not merely respond to what you do, it responds to who you believe yourself to be. The world is a mirror, reflecting the assumptions you consistently accept as true. If you walk through life feeling ordinary, overlooked, and powerless, your experiences will faithfully echo that identity. But when you begin to assume a higher concept of yourself, when you dare to see yourself as chosen, favored, and destined for greater things, young reality begins to reorganize itself around that new belief. Being the chosen one is not about arrogance. It is not about believing you are better than anyone else. It is about recognizing the divine potential that already exists within you. It is about understanding that you were never created to live in fear, limitation, and doubt. Deep within you is a creative power capable of shaping experiences, attracting opportunities, and transforming circumstances. Yet that power remains dormant until you awaken to who you truly are. Most people spend their lives waiting for external confirmation before they believe in themselves. They wait for success before they feel successful. They wait for abundance before they feel wealthy. They wait for love before they feel worthy. But the law of life works in the opposite direction. First comes the assumption. First comes the inner conviction. First comes the feeling of already being the person you desire to become. Then the outer world follows. As you listen to this message, allow yourself to entertain a bold possibility. Imagine that you are not here by accident. Imagine that your dreams are not random wishes, but glimpses of a greater destiny calling you forward. Imagine that the power you have been seeking has been within you all along. Because the moment you begin to act as if you are chosen, think as if you are chosen, and feel as if you are chosen, you set into motion forces that can change the entire direction of your life. The question is not whether why or are chosen. The real question is, are you ready to accept it? The greatest transformation that can ever occur in a person's life begins with a transformation of identity. Long before circumstances change, long before opportunities appear, and long before visible success arrives, something shifts within the individual. A new self-concept is accepted. A new story is embraced. A new awareness awakens. This is why the first and most important step is to embrace the identity of the chosen one. Most people move through life carrying an identity they never consciously selected. They inherit beliefs from family, society, past experiences, failures, disappointments, and limitations. They begin to define themselves by what happened yesterday, rather than by what is possible today. If they experience rejection, they call themselves unwanted. If they experience failure, they call themselves unsuccessful. If they experience struggle, they call themselves unlucky. Without realizing it, they were. Are these labels so long that they become part of their identity? Then life faithfully reflects those assumptions back to them. The world does not ask whether your assumptions are true. It simply mirrors them. If you believe you are overlooked, you will notice every situation that confirms it. If you believe you are powerless, you will unconsciously act in ways that reinforce that belief. If you believe that success belongs to others but not to you, you will find countless reasons why your dreams seem impossible. The outer world becomes an echo of the inner self. This is why embracing the identity of the chosen one is so powerful. It is a complete departure from the old story. It is a decision to stop identifying with limitation and begin identifying with possibility. It is the recognition that there is something extraordinary within you that has been waiting for acknowledgement. It is not about becoming someone else. It is about becoming aware of who you have always been beneath the layers of doubt and conditioning. Think about how differently a person behaves when they believe they are destined for greatness. They carry themselves differently. They speak differently. They make decisions differently. They do not spend all their energy wondering whether they deserve success because they have already accepted that they do. They do not constantly seek permission from the outside world because their confidence comes from within. Their actions flow naturally from the identity they have embraced. This is not pretending. It is not forcing yourself to believe something impossible. It is choosing to align with a higher truth about yourself. Every great achievement in history began with someone accepting an identity before there was evidence to support it. Before they became successful, they saw themselves as successful. Before they became leaders, they saw themselves as leaders. Before they achieved their dreams, they internally occupied the state of the person who had already achieved them. The challenge is that the physical world often appears to contradict your new identity in the beginning. You may decide to see yourself as abundant, while your bank account says otherwise. You may choose to see yourself as confident, while old fears still whisper in your mind. You may claim the identity of someone chosen for greater things, while your current circumstances appear ordinary. This is where persistence becomes essential. The person who changes their life is not the one who occasionally thinks positive thoughts. The person who changes their life is the one who remains faithful to a new identity even when external evidence has not yet caught up. They refuse to return to the old story. They refuse to define themselves by temporary appearances. They understand that reality is always moving toward the assumptions they consistently occupy. Imagine waking up every morning with the conviction that life is working in your favor. Imagine approaching challenges with the certainty that solutions already exist. Imagine seeing every obstacle not as proof of defeat but as part of a larger unfolding. This is how the chosen one thinks. Not because everything is perfect, but because they have accepted a new identity that transcends temporary conditions. When you embrace the identity of the chosen one, you stop asking, "Why does this always happen to me?" and begin asking, "What magnificent possibility is unfolding through me?" You stop focusing on what is missing and begin focusing on what is becoming. You stop living as a victim of circumstances and start living as the creator of your experience. There is immense power in the story you tell yourself every day. If your inner conversation constantly reminds you of your weaknesses, limitations, and failures, then that story will continue to shape your reality. But when you begin to tell a different story, when you start seeing yourself as worthy, capable, favored, and destined for greater things ever, something begins to shift. New opportunities appear. New ideas emerge. New levels of confidence develop. What once seemed impossible starts feeling natural. The truth is that being chosen is not about waiting for a sign from the outside world. It is not about someone else recognizing your value. It is about recognizing it yourself. It is about accepting that there is a creative power within you capable of producing results far beyond what you currently imagine. The moment you embrace that identity fully, you begin to move through life differently. And when you move differently, life responds differently. The identity you accept today becomes the reality you experience tomorrow. Therefore, choose wisely. Choose deliberately. Choose to see yourself as the person you were always meant to be, the chosen one. Everything in life begins with a feeling. Before a circumstance becomes visible, before an opportunity arrives, before a dream takes physical form, there is first an inner state. Most people spend their lives trying to change their outer world while neglecting the inner feeling that created it. They believe that when success comes, they will finally feel successful. When love arrives, they will finally feel loved. When abundance appears, they will finally feel secure. Yet the great secret of transformation is that life unfolds in the opposite direction. The feeling comes first, and the experience follows. This is why learning to assume the feeling of your desired reality is one of the most powerful abilities you can develop. Look at how many people postpone their happiness until some future event occurs. They tell themselves they will feel confident when they achieve their goal. They will feel worthy when someone recognizes them. They will feel fulfilled when conditions improve. In doing so, they unknowingly place their emotional state at the mercy of circumstances. Their feelings become dependent on the external world. And because the external world is constantly anging, their inner peace remains unstable. But imagine what would happen if you reversed the process. Imagine if you could feel successful before success appeared. Imagine if you could feel grateful before receiving what you desire. Imagine if you could feel love before anyone else showed you affection. In that moment, you would no longer be reacting to life. You would be influencing it. You would be operating from a completely different level of awareness. The feeling of the wish fulfilled is not wishful thinking. It is not fantasy. It is a deliberate shift in consciousness. It is the practice of mentally and emotionally occupying the state you would naturally experience if your desire were already a fact. If you had already achieved your dream, how would you think? How would you walk? How would you speak? How would you view yourself? These questions are not merely exercises in imagination. They are doorways into a new reality. Most people focus entirely on what they can see. Why measure their progress by appearances? If the evidence is not visible, they assume nothing is happening. Yet every significant creation exists invisibly before it becomes visible. A building exists first as an idea. A journey exists first as a decision. A masterpiece exists first in the imagination of the artist. Likewise, every transformation in your life begins as an inner experience before it becomes an outer fact. This is why feelings are so important. Feelings impress the subconscious mind far more deeply than words alone. You can repeat affirmations all day long, but if your dominant feeling remains fear, doubt, or lack, those emotions continue shaping your perception of reality. The subconscious responds not merely to what you say, but to what you feel to be true. Therefore, the goal is not simply to repeat positive statements. The goal is to cultivate the emotional experience of already being the person you desire to become. Think about someone who feels wealthy. Their confidence does not come from every dollar they possess. It comes from a sense of abundance within. They expect opportunities. They expect solutions. They trust that resources are available. Compare that with someone who constantly feels lack. Even when good things happen, they remain worried. They remain anxious. They remain focused on what could go wrong. The difference is not merely external conditions. The difference is the feeling they consistently occupy. The same principle applies to every area of life. A person who feels worthy attracts different experiences than someone who feels unworthy. A person who feels confident notices opportunities that others overlook. A person who feels blessed walks through life with a different expectation than someone who feels cursed by circumstances. Their inner state shapes their perception, their decisions, their actions, and ultimately their results. This does not mean ignoring challenges or pretending difficulties do not exist. It means refusing to let temporary appearances dictate your identity. It means understanding that circumstances are often reflections of past states of consciousness, and that new circumstances emerge from new states of consciousness. Instead of becoming emotionally trapped by what is visible, you begin cultivating the feeling of the reality you wish to experience. One of the most powerful practices is to spend time each day imagining your desire as already fulfilled, not struggling to make it happen, not wondering when it will happen, simply experiencing it inwardly as if it were true now. Feel the relief, feel the gratitude, feel the joy, feel the confidence. Allow yourself to become familiar with these emotions. The more natural they become, the more they begin influencing your everyday thoughts and behaviors. At first, this may feel unfamiliar because your mind has been conditioned by years of reacting to external evidence. You may be tempted to return to old doubts whenever circumstances appear unchanged. Yet every time you choose the feeling of your desired reality over the evidence of your current reality, you strengthen a new state of consciousness. You build a new identity. You establish a new expectation. Eventually, something remarkable begins to happen. The feeling you once practiced deliberately becomes natural. Confidence replaces uncertainty. Faith replaces fear. Gratitude replaces frustration. You no longer need constant evidence because your conviction comes from within. You know who you are. You know what you expect. You know what reality you are choosing to embody. The person who masters this principle discovers that life is not merely something that happens to them. It is something they participate in creating. By assuming the feeling of the desired reality, they step into alignment with the version of themselves who already possesses what they seek. And when that inner alignment becomes stable, the outer world has an extraordinary way of reflecting it back. What was once imagined begins to appear. What was once hoped for begins to manifest. What was once a dream gradually becomes a lived experience. Everything starts with the feeling, because the feeling is the bridge between the invisible and the visible, between possibility and reality, between who you are today and who you are becoming. One of the greatest obstacles standing between people and the life they desire is the habit of seeking external validation. From an early age, many are taught to look outside themselves for approval, acceptance, and confirmation of their worth. They learn to measure their value by the opinions of others, the recognition they receive, the achievements they accumulate, or the applause that follows their actions. Without realizing it, they hand over their power to the external world and spend years chasing evidence that they are enough. Yet true transformation begins the moment a person stops seeking validation from the outside and discovers it within. Company, consider how exhausting it is to live dependent upon the opinions of others. If someone praises you, you feel confident. If someone criticizes you, you feel diminished. If people support your dreams, you feel encouraged. If they doubt you, you begin questioning yourself. Your emotional state rises and falls according to circumstances beyond your control. In such a condition, you become a prisoner of appearances, constantly waiting for someone else to tell you who you are. The problem with external validation is that it can never provide lasting security. Even the most successful individuals who rely on praise eventually discover that no amount of recognition can fill the void created by self-doubt. There will always be another opinion, another challenge, another person who disagrees, another circumstance that tests your competence. If your sense of identity depends on what happens outside of you, then your peace will always be fragile. The truth is that the world often reflects the assumptions you already hold about yourself. If you secretly believe you are not worthy, you may constantly search for reassurance from others. You may seek compliments, approval, and signs of acceptance because you are attempting to fill an inner emptiness. Yet even when those things arrive, the relief is temporary because the root belief remains unchanged. The moment the praise disappears, the insecurity returns. This is why inner validation is so important. Inner validation means accepting your worth before the world acknowledges it. It means recognizing your value without requiring constant proof. It means understanding that your identity is not determined by applause, popularity, achievements, or the opinions of others. Instead, it is rooted in your awareness of who you are. Think about the people who have accomplished extraordinary things throughout history. Many of them were doubted before they were celebrated. Many were criticized before they were admired. Many were rejected before they were recognized. If they had waited for universal approval before believing in themselves, they would never have achieved what they did. Their success began with an inner conviction that existed long before external confirmation arrived. The same principle applies to your life. If you are waiting for others to believe in you before you believe in yourself, you are placing your future in someone else's hands. If you are waiting for perfect circumstances before feeling worthy, you are postponing your own power. The moment you decide that your value is not up for debate, everything begins to change. This does not mean becoming arrogant or ignoring constructive feedback. It simply means refusing to let the opinions of others define your identity. It means understanding that people often see you through the lens of their own experiences, limitations, and beliefs. Their perception of you is not necessarily the truth about you. Some people may underestimate you because they cannot see your potential. Others may criticize your dreams because they have abandoned their own. If you allow every opinion to shape your self-concept, you will spend your life being pulled in different directions. When you stop seeking external validation, a new kind of freedom emerges. You no longer feel compelled to prove yourself to everyone. You no longer need constant reassurance that you are on the right path. You become less concerned with how things appear and more focused on who you are becoming. Your confidence develops roots. It is no longer dependent upon temporary conditions. Imagine waking up each day with the certainty that your worth is already established. Imagine pursuing your goals without constantly wondering whether others approve. Imagine making decisions based on your vision rather than your fear of criticism. Such a life carries a sense of peace that cannot be purchased or manufactured. It comes from knowing that your identity is secure. One of the most powerful shifts occurs when you begin giving yourself the validation you have been seeking from others. Instead of waiting for someone to recognize your strengths, acknowledge them yourself. Instead of waiting for someone to tell you that you are capable, remind yourself daily. Instead of waiting for the world to declare that you deserve success, choose to accept it internally. The approval you seek externally often becomes available the moment you stop depending upon it. Ironically, when people stop chasing validation, they often become more magnetic. Their energy changes. They no longer appear needy or desperate for approval. They carry a quiet confidence that others naturally respect. They are not trying to convince the world of their value because they already know it. This certainty influences their actions, their decisions, and the way they show up in life. The chosen one does not wait for permission to believe in their potential. They do not require a committee to approve their dreams. They understand that every great journey begins with self-recognition. They trust the vision within even when others cannot see it. They remain faithful to their purpose even when applause is absent. Their confidence comes from an inner knowing rather than external confirmation. The moment you stop seeking validation from the outside world, you reclaim an extraordinary amount of power. You stop living according to other people's expectations and begin living according to your highest vision. You stop measuring your worth by temporary opinions and start recognizing the value that has always existed within you. And when that inner certainty becomes your foundation, you become unstoppable because no circumstance, criticism, or delay can take away what you already know to be true about yourself. Most people spend their lives living toward their dreams rather than from them. They see their desires as distant destinations somewhere in the future, separated from their present reality by time, me, effort, and circumstances. They wake up each day feeling incomplete, believing that fulfillment exists somewhere ahead of them. They tell themselves, when I achieve this goal, then I will be happy. When I receive that opportunity, then I will feel successful. When my circumstances improve, then I will finally feel at peace. In doing so, they unknowingly keep their desires perpetually out of reach because they continue to identify with the version of themselves who does not yet have what they want. This is why one of the most transformative principles you can ever understand is to live from the end, not toward it. To live towards something means you are constantly aware of its absence. Your focus remains on the distance between where you are and where you want to be. Every day becomes another reminder that the dream has not yet arrived. Every obstacle becomes evidence that the goal is still far away. Even your efforts can reinforce the feeling of lack because they are rooted in the belief that you must somehow become worthy of receiving what you desire. Living from the end is completely different. It means mentally and emotionally occupying the state of the person who has already achieved the desired outcome. Instead of constantly focusing on what is missing, you begin identifying with the reality you wish to experience. You stop seeing yourself as someone trying to become successful and begin seeing yourself as someone who already embodies success. You stop acting like a person hoping for abundance and begin thinking from the perspective of someone who already feels abundant. The difference may seem subtle, but it changes everything. Imagine an actor preparing for a role. They do not merely study the character from a distance. They step into the character's identity. They think as the character thinks. They speak as the character speaks. They feel as the character feels. For a period of time, they inhabit that reality so completely that their actions become natural expressions of it. In a similar way, living from the end requires stepping into the identity of your desired self and allowing that identity to influence your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. Many people struggle with this concept because they are conditioned to believe only what they can see. They trust appearances more than imagination. If their bank account looks limited, they feel limited. If opportunities seem scarce, they feel discouraged. If challenges appear, they assume failure is near. Yet the creative process does not begin with appearances. It begins with consciousness. Every external condition was once an invisible possibility before it became visible. Every achievement existed first as an internal reality before it manifested externally. When you live from the end, you stop allowing current circumstances to define your future. Instead, you allow your vision of the future to influence your present state of being. You begin asking different questions, rather than wondering how everything will happen. You focus on who you would be if it had already happened. How would you think? How would you feel? How would you respond to challenges? How would you carry yourself? These questions move your attention away from lack and toward fulfillment. One of the reasons people remain stuck is because they spend too much time rehearsing the reality they wish to escape. They repeatedly think about their problems, their fears, their disappointments, and their limitations. They mentally relive unwanted situations so often that those experiences become deeply familiar. Then they wonder why change feels difficult. The mind naturally gravitates toward what is familiar. If lack is familiar, abundance feels distant. If doubt is familiar, confidence feels unnatural. Living from the end reverses this process. Instead of rehearsing unwanted outcomes, you begin rehearsing the reality you desire. You mentally dwell in success, fulfillment, joy, confidence, and abundance. You become emotionally familiar with the state you wish to experience. Over time, this new state starts feeling natural. What once seemed impossible begins to feel expected. What once felt distant begins to feel inevitable. This does not mean ignoring practical action. It means allowing your actions to emerge from a new identity, rather than from fear and desperation. A person living from the end does not act because they are trying to prove their worth. They act because they already see themselves as worthy. Their decisions come from confidence, rather than insecurity. Their persistence comes from expectation, rather than anxiety. They are not chasing the future, they are expressing the reality they have already accepted within. There will be moments when external conditions appear unchanged. There will be times when reality seems slow to reflect your new assumptions. This is where faith becomes essential. Living from the end requires trusting the unseen process. It requires remaining loyal to your chosen identity, even when physical evidence has not yet appeared. Many people abandon their vision too soon because they become discouraged by temporary appearances. They return to old patterns of thinking and feeling, unknowingly recreating the same experiences they wish to leave behind. The person who masters this principle understands that circumstances are temporary, but consciousness is creative. They know that what they consistently assume, feel, and identify with will eventually shape their experience. Therefore, they remain faithful to the end result. They continue thinking from fulfillment rather than lack. They continue feeling gratitude rather than frustration. They continue embodying confidence rather than doubt. When you truly begin living from the end, something remarkable happens. You stop feeling as though your happiness depends on future events. You discover a sense of peace in the present moment. You no longer feel separated from your desire because you have already accepted it internally. The emotional struggle begins to dissolve. Life feels lighter. Opportunities seem more visible. Inspiration flows more naturally. Your actions become more aligned because they are guided by certainty instead of fear. The chosen one understands that the future is not something to chase. It is something to embody. They recognize that the version of themselves they wish to become already exists as a possibility within consciousness. Their task is not to force reality into submission, but to align with that version of themselves so completely that it becomes their dominant state of being. By living from the end, rather than toward it, they bridge the gap between desire and fulfillment, between imagination and manifestation, between possibility and reality. In that state, transformation is no longer a distant hope, it becomes an inevitable expression of who they have chosen to be. There is a power within you that is greater than any obstacle you have ever faced, greater than any limitation you have ever believed in, and greater than any circumstance currently standing before you. Most people spend their lives searching for power in the external world. They seek it in money, positions, relationships, achievements, and the approval of others. They believe that if they can acquire enough of these things, they will finally feel strong, secure, and complete. Yet no external achievement can compare to the power that already exists within the human imagination, consciousness, and awareness. The final step in embracing the life of the chosen one is awakening the divine power within. Many people live completely unaware of their own creative abilities. They move through life reacting to events rather than realizing they possess the capacity to influence the direction of their experiences. They see themselves as victims of circumstances, prisoners of the past, or products of their environment. Because they accept this view of themselves, why unknowingly surrender the very power that could transform their lives? Think about how often people say things such as, "This is just the way life is," or "Nothing ever works out for me," or "I have no control over what happens." These statements may seem harmless, but they reveal a deeper belief. They suggest that power exists outside the individual. They imply that circumstances are the creators, and that the person is merely the recipient. Yet every great transformation begins when someone realizes the opposite is true. The outer world is not the source of their power. Their awareness is. The divine power within is not something that must be earned. It is not something reserved for a select group of people. It is an inherent part of your being. It is the creative intelligence that allows you to imagine possibilities beyond your current conditions. It is the force that enables you to hold a vision of a better future, even when present circumstances seem discouraging. It is the kappa, city to choose your assumptions, direct your focus, and shape your perception of reality. One of the greatest misunderstandings people have is believing that power is measured by external influence. They think powerful people are those who control others, accumulate wealth, or gain recognition. True power is much deeper than that. True power is the ability to govern your own mind. It is the ability to remain faithful to your vision when appearances suggest otherwise. It is the ability to choose faith over fear, confidence over doubt, and possibility over limitation. Every day, whether consciously or unconsciously, you are using this creative power. Your dominant thoughts influence your emotions. Your emotions influence your actions. Your actions influence your experiences. The question is not whether you possess creative power. The question is whether you are directing it deliberately or allowing it to operate through old habits and assumptions. Many people unknowingly use their imagination against themselves. They imagine failure before it happens. They rehearse worst-case scenarios. They anticipate disappointment. They dwell on fears. Then they wonder why anxiety dominates their lives. The imagination is a powerful tool, but it does not distinguish between constructive and destructive use. Whatever you repeatedly impress upon it begins shaping your experience. Awakening the divine power within requires becoming aware of this process. It means taking responsibility for the thoughts you entertain and the stories you tell yourself. It means recognizing that your inner conversations are not meaningless mental noise. They are creative acts. Every time you imagine yourself as incapable, you reinforce limitation. Every time you imagine yourself as successful, confident and worthy, you strengthen a new possibility. This awakening often begins with a simple realization. You are not your circumstances. You are not your past mistakes. You are not your fears. You are number. To the labels others have placed upon you. These things may have influenced your experiences, but they do not define your essence. Beneath every limitation lies an awareness that remains untouched by failure, rejection, or disappointment. That awareness is where your true power resides. When you begin connecting with this inner power, something extraordinary happens. Challenges no longer appear as permanent barriers. Instead, they become temporary conditions that can be transcended. Fear loses some of its grip because you realize it is merely a state of mind, rather than an absolute truth. Obstacles become opportunities to strengthen your faith in your own creative ability. The awakened individual understands that life is not happening to them. Life is responding to them. Their assumptions, expectations, beliefs, and emotional states are constantly influencing their experience. This understanding changes everything because it shifts the focus away from blaming circumstances and toward cultivating consciousness. Imagine waking up each morning knowing that your thoughts matter. Imagine understanding that the story you tell yourself today is helping create the reality you will experience tomorrow. Imagine recognizing that your imagination is not merely a source of fantasy, but a creative faculty capable of influencing the direction of your life. Such awareness transforms ordinary living into a deliberate act of creation. This does not mean every challenge disappears overnight. It does not mean life becomes free of difficulties. What changes is your relationship with those difficulties. Instead of feeling powerless, you approach them with confidence. Instead of assuming defeat, you expect solutions. Instead of focusing exclusively on problems, you become aware of possibilities. The power within allows you to respond differently, and those different responses gradually create different outcomes. The chosen one is not someone who has access to a special power unavailable to others. The chosen one is simply someone who has awakened to a power that was always present. They understand that the greatest force in their life is not external conditions, but internal consciousness. They know that imagination is a gift, faith is a creative force, and self-concept shapes reality. They no longer wait for the world to change before changing themselves. They change themselves first and allow the world to reflect that transformation. As you awaken the divine power within, you begin to see life through new eyes. You stop viewing yourself as small, insignificant, or limited. You recognize that within you exists the ability to dream, create, persist, and transform. You understand that the same creative force that has carried visionaries, innovators, leaders, and achievers throughout history is available to you. The power has never been absent. It has simply been waiting for recognition. The moment you acknowledge it, trust it, and begin living from it, you step into a completely different experience of life, one marked by purpose, confidence, faith, and the unwavering awareness that you possess everything necessary to create a future greater than anything you have imagined before.